Imagine living in a world where there's no electricity, no freezers, and no grocery stores around the corner. Yet, families have managed to preserve meat for years without it ever spoiling. How do they do it? That's the everyday reality for the Amish, who've perfected this craft for generations. In today's video, we'll explore the fascinating techniques the Amish use to preserve meat without modern technology. Whether you're interested in off-grid living, building self-sufficiency, or just want to understand how people lived before refrigeration, this is a tradition worth learning about. Have you ever wondered how people kept food fresh before refrigerators? The Amish use methods that are not only simple but have stood the test of time. These techniques might even surprise you with how effective they are. By the end of this video, you'll know the secrets behind their meat preservation methods and why they might just be the ultimate backup plan for modern times. Whether you're preparing for emergencies or simply curious about these old-world techniques, stay tuned. Let's take a step back in time and see how these ingenious methods came to be and how they're still being used today. Long before modern refrigeration, communities like the Amish had to rely on time-tested methods to preserve their food. In the 1800s, the concept of cold storage was limited to ice houses, and electricity was a luxury that didn't exist in rural areas. Families had to be resourceful to ensure their food lasted through harsh winters and sweltering summers. For the Amish, who continue to live without modern conveniences, these traditions remain essential. Imagine a kitchen bustling with activity, meats hanging in a cool, dark cellar, and the scent of smoked hams wafting through the air. These methods are not just about survival, they're deeply rooted in their way of life and culture. While many of us rely on freezers and vacuum-sealed bags, these methods show us that there's more than one way to keep food fresh, ways that don't rely on modern technology. But what are these techniques? And how do they manage to preserve meat for years without refrigeration? Let's explore their first and perhaps most fascinating method, smoking and curing. The Amish have a deep understanding of how to work with nature rather than against it. One of their primary methods for preserving meat is smoking and curing. This age-old technique not only enhances flavor, but also creates a protective barrier that keeps meat safe from bacteria. They begin by selecting the highest quality cuts of meat. It's then coated in a mixture of salt and sometimes sugar, key ingredients for drawing out moisture and preventing spoilage. Once cured, the meat is hung in a smokehouse, where it absorbs the flavors of smoldering hardwoods like hickory or applewood. This slow process not only preserves the meat, but creates a rich, smoky flavor that lasts for years. Yay! Imagine the scene. Rows of meats hanging in a carefully maintained smokehouse, the air thick with the scent of natural wood smoke. There's no rush, no modern gadgets, just patience and time, working their magic. But smoking isn't the only technique they use. There's another method that's just as effective and fascinating: pressure canning. A technique that seals meat away from air and bacteria while keeping it tender and flavorful for years to come. In the next part, we'll uncover how the Amish use this canning method and why it's a perfect fit for anyone seeking true food security. While smoking creates flavor and longevity, pressure canning is another vital method the Amish use to preserve meat for years. This technique is simple, effective, and doesn't require electricity, making it ideal for their off-grid lifestyle. Here's how they do it. The meat is prepared, often seasoned lightly, and packed into sterilized glass jars. These jars are then placed into a pressure canner, a heavy-duty part that uses heat and pressure to kill bacteria and seal the jars airtight. Once sealed, the meat is safe to store for years without refrigeration. This method is genius in its simplicity. The high heat destroys harmful bacteria, while the vacuum seal keeps the meat safe from contamination. Whether it's chicken or beef, this approach ensures the meat stays flavorful and ready to use even in the toughest conditions. Pressure canning isn't just a preservation technique. It's a way to ensure you always have access to protein, even during power outages or emergencies. No need to rely on freezers or grocery stores. It's food security at its finest. But beyond the practicality, there's something deeply satisfying about knowing you're feeding your family with food you've preserved yourself. It's a connection to the past and a step toward true independence. Imagine the peace of mind that comes from knowing your pantry is stocked with safe, delicious food no matter what happens. You're no longer at the mercy of power outages or supply chain issues. That's the kind of independence the Amish have perfected over generations. This isn't just about storing meat. It's about embracing a time-tested way of life. Every jar of preserved meat represents self-reliance and respect for the resources we have, qualities that are becoming rarer in today's fast-pacing world. There's a unique satisfaction that comes from preserving your own food. It's more than a skill. It's a rewarding experience that connects you to the process of providing for your family. Every time you open a jar, you'll feel the pride of your effort and preparation. By learning and passing down these skills, you're not just preserving food, you're preserving a piece of history and teaching the next generation how to be resilient and resourceful. These methods are a bridge to simpler times, offering wisdom we can all benefit from today. Now that you understand the emotional and practical benefits, you might be wondering how to get started. Don't worry, we'll walk you through the essential steps to begin preserving your own meat at home. Let's talk about how you can begin using these Amish techniques in your own kitchen. The best part is that you don't need fancy equipment, just a few essential tools, some patience, and a commitment to learning. Pressure canning is the foundation of meat preservation. If you're new, begin with small batches of chicken or beef. Invest in a reliable pressure canner, jars with tight sealing lids, and quality cuts of meat. Pro tip, always sterilize your jars and follow canning guidelines for safety. Curing with salt and spices is another simple technique. Create a curing mix with salt and sugar and add spices for flavor. This method works well for pork or fish. Note, proper storage is crucial to ensure your cured meat stays fresh for months. Try smoking for preservation. If you love smoky flavors, smoking is a great option. Use a smoker or build a simple one at home. Start with cuts like ham or jerky for easier practice. Store in a cool, dry place. Just like the Amish, find a dedicated space for your preserved meat. A root cellar pantry or even a cool basement works well to maintain the right conditions. If you are not sure where to start, plenty of guides and community groups are available to help. Look for canning classes or local farmers markets where you can find fresh, preservative-free meat. There are also excellent books and online tutorials that break down each method step by step. Why not involve the whole family? Teaching these skills to your kids or learning alongside your partner can make the process even more rewarding. Of course, learning something new can feel intimidating at first, but the good news is that most of the challenges you might face have simple solutions. Let's look at how to avoid the most common pitfalls. Even with the simple and effective techniques the Amish use, there are a few common challenges you might face when preserving meat. Let's go through them and discuss how to overcome them. One of the most common hurdles people face is not having the proper equipment. But don't let this hold you back. While it's true that pressure canner, smoker, or curing supplies help, you can still start small with basic tools. For canning, even a large pot and some jars can get you started. Look for used equipment or borrow from a friend to save money while you're learning. When it comes to preserving meat, safety is key. Some might worry about spoilage, especially when they're trying something new. If you follow guidelines, sterilize jars, and ensure your storage areas are cool and dry, you greatly reduce any risk. Don't rush the process. Take your time to learn proper techniques, and always double-check that your preserved meat has been sealed correctly. Curing, smoking, and canning meat can feel like a lot of work, especially if you've never done it before. But, just like any new skill, it gets easier the more you practice. Solution: start with small batches and choose methods that fit into your lifestyle. You don't have to preserve a whole cow at once. Start with a few chickens or some pork belly and build up from there. Not everyone has access to a cool basement or a dedicated root cellar. But that doesn't mean you can't preserve your meat if you live in a smaller space. Consider using a deep freezer or even a cool garage if it stays at a consistent temperature. Solution: look around your home for underutilized storage areas that might work for keeping your preserved meats safe and fresh. Consistency and patience. Preserving meat is not something that gives you instant results. It can take days or even weeks before your meat is ready to eat. This can be frustrating for those who are used to quick solutions. Remind yourself that this is a long-term investment in your food security. It's worth the wait, and once you get the hang of it, you'll appreciate this slow, rewarding process. With the right knowledge and a little practice, you can overcome these obstacles and start preserving your meat like the Amish. Now, let's wrap things up with how you can take what you've learned and turn it into lasting habits. You now have the basics on how the Amish preserve meat without refrigeration, and you've learned about the methods, benefits, and even how to overcome common challenges. So, what's next? If you're feeling ready to dive in, I recommend starting small. Choose one method you're most interested in, whether it's smoking, curing, or canning. Start with a small batch to get the hang of it. This way, you can perfect your technique without feeling overwhelmed. Take inventory of what you already have at home and make a list of the supplies you'll need to get started. You don't have to buy everything new. Check out local thrift stores or online marketplaces for used equipment. Some of the best tools come second-hand, and you can find great deals. If you're passionate about living off-grid and preserving food the old-fashioned way, consider joining a community. There are many online forums and social media groups dedicated to sustainable living, homesteading, and old-school preservation methods. You can ask questions, share tips, and learn from others who have already been through the process. Remember, preserving meat is as much about trial and error as it is about following instructions. Don't be afraid to try different methods, flavors, and techniques. Some may work better for you than others, and that's okay. Keep experimenting and refining your skills. The key to mastering any off-grid skill, including meat preservation, is consistency. As with any new practice, the more you do it, the better you'll get. And while it might take a little patience, it's all worth it when you're able to enjoy homemade, preserved meat. If you found this video helpful, so do not forget to subscribe to Off-Grid Wisdom for more tips on living a self-sufficient, sustainable lifestyle. And if you have any questions or stories about your own meat preservation adventures, drop them in the comments below. I love to hear from you. Now it's time for you to take action. Grab your supplies, pick your method, and start preserving meat like the Amish. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll dive even deeper into off-grid living.